Hey guys, like I promised, I decided to jump onto Facebook and go live and share some thoughts with you guys about kind of the last couple days, some things that have been on my mind, my heart. I wrote out 5 billion different things that I thought I might want to say, and we're just going to kind of see where it goes from here. So I know people will be jumping on as time progresses. I have I'm going to apologize up front if it sounds echoey and stuff like that. I'm actually in the process of moving into a new place, and so my furniture will be here tomorrow, but for the moment it is pretty bare, so unfortunately the sound is bouncing off the walls, so you just have to bear with me on that. Hopefully it's not too disruptive. Apart from that, I just wanted to I also want to make sure that I jump off in time. There's going to be a session with Christine Caine on racism, and so I wanted to make sure that I'll link that once I'm done with this, so that people who want to join that or at least watch that discussion, you can. But because I don't know exactly what I'm going to say, I'm going to just kick this off with prayer, and then I will start running my mouth. Lord, thank you for this time, for us to be able to come together. Thank you for technology to be a connection point for us in this crazy, crazy time, this crazy world we're living in. And just give me the words to say and help me to speak from your heart. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. So, obviously right now we are living in a very crazy world, and race has been a key issue, but I think just in general, the whole idea of divisiveness is really the primary theme that I see really occurring in this world today. It's just a divisiveness spirit. You know, a house divided against itself can't stand, and so that's really the approach that I see the enemy is taking with us just as a nation as a whole. Another thing that I kind of wanted to throw in there is the fact that a lot of people have been reaching out about, like, how do I be a better ally? Like, what can I do to really connect with people in a area that I'm not really familiar with? And so I'm going to try to do my best to kind of fill you in on that, provide a few resources, and then, like I said, Christine Caine's having a conversation right after this, so I'll make sure that I include that link so that you can jump in on that. I think first thing I want to say is, for me personally, like, this is not like, I'm not barking up a new tree to, like, mix metaphors, I guess. I have always had a heart for jumping into issues that I think maybe are neglected. Just for background, and I'll give you the reason for that background here shortly, but like, for when I was in middle school, I jumped in, and there was a group of kids who were getting free or reduced lunch, and the lunch itself was awful. The standards were disgusting, and it was kind of heartbreaking and I don't even remember if I was one of those kids or not, but it was pretty heartbreaking to see how, like, horrible quality this food was, whatever. So I went out around and I started a petition, and like, we got like 400 signatures, and we presented it, and some changes were made, some rebuttals were made that this is not actually factual, but at the end of the day, like, I did something. And then when I was in high school, I led a cross-cultural dialogue discussion group. When I was in college, I studied sociology, but I was also one of 4 regimental respect representatives. So I just say that to say, I personally have always had a hand in all of this myself. So this isn't like a new thing that I just decided to pick up more recently. The reason that I give that background is because I have voluntarily inserted myself into this conversation. And as a result, like, when people ask questions and things like that, like, I want to be able and available to give my perspective, because that's all I can do is give my perspective for the situation at hand. But I think the first thing that I could say about trying to be a good ally is the fact that none of us really know the answer. Like, if anybody knew the answer to this would have long since been resolved, because for generations we've been trying to find a solution. Like, how do you solve this issue of divisiveness? And unfortunately, apart from Christ, like, there's not going to be a perfect answer to that. So I say that to say, if you are looking to be a good ally, the first thing I would ask that you do is make sure that as you start asking those questions of your friends, that you don't weary them out. We're all trying to figure this out at the same time. And so your friend who may fit the category of whatever issue it is that is being discussed, if you have an issue about LGBTQ something and you have that one friend who fits in the category of like queer, don't burden them with all of your questions if they have not voluntarily inserted themselves into the conversation. That's a really great way to be a good ally to people, because it is exhausting and it is frustrating, and the problem with being in the category that is like in question is that you cannot remove yourself. If you are female, you're not going to be able to remove yourself from being a female. So those issues, you can't separate yourself from those issues. And so if you're a male and you're like, I want to understand what women are going through, you could still remove yourself from the female issues, but that woman could not. So I would say that's probably the biggest thing that you could do as an ally, is just make sure that you're not wearying your friends with these questions and concerns and stuff like that, because we're all trying to figure it out too. With regards to I would say making sure your word choices are concise and clear. I think that's another really big important thing that you can do as an ally, and just you personally. I think one of the big things is that we use our words very flippantly or without really giving regard to what they mean. And I'm not, hopefully this doesn't make anybody feel bad or anything like that, because I know some of my friends use these terminologies as well. And so, this is not to pick on anybody. But for example, one phrase is like, if let's stand up for people who cannot stand up for themselves. Just that phrase alone, like if it's someone who is physically incapable of standing up for themselves, so they're a child or maybe they have some sort of handicap or something like that, then that would be an accurate statement. However, if you're talking about adults who are trying to speak, but their voices are not being heard, those are two completely separate issues. And so, and again, I say this with all love and not in any way to insult any of my friends who may use these phrases, but, saying like, let's stand up for people who can't stand up for themselves, it does come across a little patronizing and it does come across a little bit insulting. So I would just say be careful of those word choices. There's a few others that I have in mind. Maybe I'll address them at some other time, but I think that's probably a really big one. Another thing I think would be very helpful for people who are looking to be allies is to be really genuine and honest about where you're actually at. There's a lot of things that you can get involved in, a lot of causes that you can champion. I know that I sometimes can get compassion fatigue. It's a real thing, and you can't care about everything. For example, I'm not really an animal rights activist. I think animals are cute, but I don't particularly have a heart to champion the cause of animal rights, And so I could pretend that I am an animal rights activist, but it wouldn't be genuine. So I would say make sure wherever you're at, you're reflecting it in a genuine way. Because unfortunately, people can see through fake things, and yes, even if your heart is in the right place, if you're not genuine, you lose that trust that you are trying to gain to actually be able to have the conversation. So I think that that's probably another really, really important thing, is just be genuine about where you're at. If you're like, hey, this isn't an issue that I know about, it's not an issue I honestly even really have cared about before, and I want to try, just be honest about that being where you're at. And I think that's a great start. I think most specifically with regards to like the things that have been going on in the last couple days, because I know that's what's been weighing on all of our hearts a lot more recently, is like, how do I process all of this? How do I feel? And again, I you know, I kind of make the joke, like, you don't want to be like the face for the race, you know, and so having to represent your entire demographic is a little bit tough, because we're all individuals, and so I don't want to say anything on behalf of a whole group with the indication that like this is actually how everyone feels, you know. So I'm just going to give kind of some things that I feel about the situation and let you guys do with it as you please. But I personally think that the situations at hand with regards to those police brutality things that have been going on they're legitimate, and they are things that people don't feel like are being heard. And unfortunately, because the conversation is so heated, everybody's so very, very adamant about whatever side they're on. Nobody's having the discussion about how do we solve this, what's the middle ground for this. And so it just becomes this nasty battle. And like I said, the concerns are legitimate, you know, and I have family members who are in the police force as well. And so, you know, people who I love and who are very great police officers themselves. So it's not like I'm saying like, oh, the police are bad, you know, but I think that there are bad people in every group. And unfortunately for the police force, they're basically one unified force all across the nation. And if one bad apple does something bad, then everybody views them in the same light. But I feel like that's equally prevalent within the Black community, is that people see one bad thing that someone who is a Black person does, and it might even be how the media portrays you, because you have to be sensitive to the fact that the subconscious things are also getting into your system, whether you realize it or not. And so now you see this bad thing and you're like, okay, this person is now bad. And so whether it's a police officer or a Black guy in a hoodie, you think this person is bad, and you behave in a way that therefore perpetuates whatever feelings you have about this person. And so I think that's kind of the heart of some of this problem, is that everybody is letting their subconscious, you know, get in the mix of this. And the thing is that a police officer who does something based on a subconscious thing may think, I'm not being racist, I'm not trying to be racist. And again, it's a subconscious issue, so you are not even aware that you're doing it. And I'll give an example of a time when I myself have done it, because I think that transparency is good, and like, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but those societal ideas are ingrained in all of us, and they come from media or things that we've seen or whatever. But I think that those societal ideas and those norms can really sink into our own hearts. I remember there was a place that I was working. I was a pretty senior level manager at this place, and we were conducting interviews for a lower level manual labor position. And we had several people who were going to be coming in throughout the day. One of my employees said, hey, we have some of the candidates sitting out in the lobby. You know, I'll be happy to bring them in. I was like, no, I've got some extra time. I'll just go meet them myself. Walked out into the lobby. Like I said, this is a lower level manual labor position. And I saw two gentlemen sitting there. I introduced myself, said I would take them back. And there was another gentleman sitting there. And I asked him, I was like, oh, excuse me, sir. Are you here to see anyone in particular? You know, I thought he might be there to see my boss. And he was like, no, I'm here for the position. The two gentlemen that were there to interview were young Black men. And the guy who was sitting next to them was a middle-aged white man. And I myself called that guy sir, and I didn't call the other two guys like sir or even question why they were there. And I just had to take a step back and say, like, wow, it happens and it affects even me. Like, it's just systemic. And so I think that it's important not to beat yourself up when you make mistakes, but I think it's also very important to realize like it's ingrained into us as a society to not give certain people the benefit of the doubt. And so I just say take a look at the interactions you see during the day and just step back and like maybe when you go to the store, watch and see how the cashier treats one person versus another person. Do they try to hurry the one person off the register quickly as they're trying to zip up their purse? Do they smile and chit chat with one person or another? Like these are just little small things, but they start to wear on you. But anyway, I would say those are some of the big things. And then even with regards to the riots or whatever last night, I know a lot of people have been concerned about like my safety or anything like that. I wasn't out late. Like I went down with a few friends. We handed out some pizzas at 38th in Chicago. So at the site where everything happened, which if you look at the news and stuff like that, that site had been pretty calm throughout the entirety of this whole thing. It was really, honestly, it was a really beautiful, sweet atmosphere. I was so glad that I went. And I think we were all feeling that way last night when we went, and we left around 7:30 p.m. And I have not been back boots on the ground to that location since then. I did drive past it this morning and take pictures from the bridge, but I haven't gone back. So I know people are concerned about me staying safe. I haven't gone back out there, was gone long before everything happened. So I just wanted to reassure you I'm okay with that. However, I was watching the live feeds that several of the young people who were doing alternative media were streaming last night. Very, very, very interesting, kind of heartbreaking to see how much damage and looting and all that kind of stuff that was happening. And I'm only giving my perspective based on what I saw, what I heard, what I heard from other people who had been down there longer than I had and stayed past when I was there. I understand that and from a tactical perspective, I also understand dispersing crowds earlier in the evening before they start to bring the bad apples into the group as the night tends to go on. So I understand from a tactical perspective why the police force may have been trying to get the crowd to disseminate earlier in the day. But what had been happening from everything I know about from firsthand accounts, including when we were there a couple blocks down the road, the people who were down at the precinct were continually getting kind of hit with rubber bullets and smoke bombs and stuff like that from the day prior as well as, into last night. And I think honestly, and again, I'm not justifying their actions one bit, but honestly, I think at some point they just snapped and kind of went rogue a little bit. But there is one other thing that I wanted to point out about the group is that it was extremely diverse, extremely young, but extremely diverse. And so I've been really happy to see that the narrative hasn't spun out of control at the moment about, the Black community is destroying their own property and blah, 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 because I was very much concerned that could have been a thing. But it was a very diverse group, and I don't know how you curtail some of that. I think there was some alcohol and some drugs involved in it, but I don't know how you curtail that. And so just be praying for the community, just be praying for those businesses and the neighborhoods, because I would say probably the vast majority of the people who are out looting and burning and stealing and stuff like that probably don't live in those neighborhoods. And so it's easy for them to have done things and then get to leave and not worry about the fact that maybe you've just burned down the grocery store that somebody needs. So I saw a couple of questions and I will answer them real quick, and then I will get off of here and give you guys the link to Christine Cain's discussion that she's going to have in case anybody's interested in that. Okay. So I think being unified in Christ, like we have to be fully aware of the idea, and I like how Torrin Wells put it, and maybe I'll provide that link as well, but he kind of went into the story of the Good Samaritan and how Jesus was actually having this discussion with some folks, and Samaria was a very despised area, so it's like a low-level place that you can see in the Bible. There were multiple accounts of Jesus even deliberately avoiding going through Samaria. So, like, it's not like people were huge fans of Samaritans, but essentially, these people, they're asking, like, oh, well, how do I know I'm going to be a good person or whatever? And he tells the story of the person who's been robbed and is on the side of the road, and then essentially a pastor comes by and, like, walks over him, and then somebody else who from the church, like, walks past and kind of, like, looks at them and then goes on their way. And then some random Samaritan person comes and helps the guy out, and he's like, who of these is, like, actually treated him like a neighbor? And so again, I go back to the comment that I said in the beginning. You can't champion every cause. It's not even safe to, I think, accommodate every request or every pull on your time that you ever get. So I think that Christians, sometimes we get it twisted where we think, like, oh, as a Christian, I have to do everything for everyone. I don't really think that that's true. You do have to use wisdom and discernment, and the Lord should show you which people you need to engage with and, like, what you should do for that. And as image bearers of the Lord, I would say, like, we're all created in the image of God. So we can't be, and honestly, I had a moment the other day, and it was actually about myself. So it wasn't like it was somebody else. I had a moment where I had done something so dumb, and I was just like, man, like this, I'm just like crap right now, like worthless right now, just because I had done something dumb. And it was like a cavalier statement that I made, but I immediately got checked in my spirit, because the Lord was like, I created you in my image. So are you really going to say right now that you're crap or you're worthless or something like that? And I was very convicted. So I think if we take a step back and we look at people and we're like, all right, everybody else is made in the image of the Lord. How can I love them or interact with them in a way that shows that you might be a knucklehead, but I can still appreciate you as an image bearer of the Lord. Again, can't champion every cause. And yes, there are certain times where an investigation is required to, like, see, like, what really happened in the situation. But I think there's a few things that you can kind of keep in mind to see, like, in this specific instance, why does the Black community feel so slighted when those things happen? Because maybe it's a situation where it is somebody who's conducting some criminal activity that could potentially be dangerous. And so you're like, well, the person was criminal. Why, let's let the investigation play out. The problem with that is that there's been people who've shot up movie theaters. There's been people who have bombed marathons. There have been people who have raped girls on their campuses and things like that. And unfortunately, the crimes and the reactions and the penalties don't end up resulting in either the death sentence, on the spot death, or even, the same level of actual punitive legal sentencing. And so I don't think the debate is ever, this person was doing something wrong, they should not go to jail. I don't think you'll find a Black person who says that if someone is committing a crime, they shouldn't go to jail. I think the question is why can someone bomb a marathon and get taken alive, but they write a bad check and get killed in the street? So that's where the disparity comes from. And then if you go into the comment section, I would encourage you to do that today. Go into the comment section of any thread about these issues, and you will find people who says, well, we don't have all the facts. Well, maybe we need more details. And it's just like, these are human beings. Like, I guarantee you, if your dog bites someone, you will not put your knee on the dog's throat until they stop breathing and moving, just because they've done something bad. And so I think, again, that's where the Black community gets a little bit disheartened, because they're like, you wouldn't even treat your dog like that if they did something wrong. We should just have the ability to be tried for our crimes if we've committed one the same way anybody else would. And so I think keeping that in mind, it's hard to know when to speak up. But there will be times when you will feel convicted to use your voice to say something about what's happening. And I would encourage you not to ignore that. But then there's other times where you're like, I will literally be casting my pearls before swine if I say something to this person at this moment. So I will prayerfully disengage and just realize that this is a lesson learned. This person is a knucklehead, and just kind of take it from there. Let's see. Yes, I had said something about it earlier, but I only went out from about 5 to 7:30 yesterday. We were at 38th in Chicago, which is a couple blocks from the precinct where everything kicked off. Super peaceful at that point, super peaceful at that location almost all day. And yeah, things just deteriorated. But as I had mentioned before, unfortunately, I think it was a twofold situation. The police were trying to do the right thing tactically to get the group to disperse prior to nightfall when people start getting rowdy. But that group was not rowdy. And so I think by shooting the smoke bombs and the rubber bullets and stuff like that, trying to scare people away, they actually just ended up infuriating people. And the crowd, which, as I mentioned before, was extremely diverse, I think just lost it. And so it's just, it was a bad situation, and I really hope everybody got it out of their system last night, because that was horrible. But I know that there's other protests and demonstrations and stuff like that planned. But yeah, I'm fine. I haven't gone back down there except for to drive past kind of like the general area. So nobody has to worry about that. So, well, I think I will cut it off here. If anybody has any more questions, feel free to hit me up. Like I said at the beginning, I think that one of the big things to keep in mind when you're being an ally is just, hey, if you've got friends of color or LGBTQ friends or women friends, and there's an issue that pertains to that demographic, please don't make that person, figuratively like the face of the race and bring all of your questions to them unless they have voluntarily inserted themselves into that discussion. Because even for those of us who have, it gets wearisome. It's just exhausting to have to live through and fight through these questions ourselves. And so, I would say just Google what questions you have. There's plenty of information. You can take or leave it. You can find your exact flavor that you like. But don't burden your friends with things if they haven't made themselves available to answer some of those questions. But that is all I have. I am going to give you guys the links to, hey everybody, I'm going to give you guys the link to the discussion that Pastor Christine Kane is about to have, so you can jump on there in 2 minutes and learn more if you'd like. But other than that, love you guys, and thank you guys for listening, and I will chat with you later.